Being outside is good for us. It's that simple. And trails make it easy for us to walk, bike, and be active outside in our own backyards. On the trail, we see people moving, connecting with their communities, making the places where they live great. For 40 years, Rails to Trails Conservancy has led the way, creating trails across the country, making it safer and easier for everyone to get outside. They want you to get involved. Find your trail and start your journey today at railstotrails.org/iHeart and follow at Rails to Trails on social.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In April of 2024, a NASA aircraft was flying over the Greenland ice sheet, mapping the ice with radar, when its instruments picked up something that should not have been there. Structures, buried roughly 100 feet below the surface. Tunnels, chambers, the unmistakable geometry of something that was once built. A city frozen in the ice. The scientists knew immediately what they were looking at, because the city has a name: Camp Century. Built by the United States Army in 1959. Powered by a nuclear reactor, home to 200 men, publicly celebrated, filmed, and even visited by Boy Scouts, and concealing beneath the publicity one of the most audacious secret military projects of the entire Cold War. A plan so sensitive that the United States hid it from the very ally whose territory it was buried under. Our history brief today covers some recent history news. A quick word from our sponsors.
Monday AI agents took over my work. And I absolutely love it. Chasing deadlines, writing status reports, updating stakeholders. Agents handle the daily grind now. They live inside Monday.com, so they see the full picture. My work, my team, the whole company. And I don't have to worry about the data. It's safe, which means I'm free to focus on the big stuff, knowing everything runs smoothly in the background. It's completely shifted the way we work. Create your own AI agent in minutes on Monday.com.
This day in history. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, setting in motion the chain of alliances that plunged Europe into the First World War. On July 28, 1868, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was officially ratified, guaranteeing citizenship and equal protection under the law to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Story of the day. The story here begins with geography. If you look at the globe, not a flat map, but a globe, you will see what Cold War planners saw back then. The shortest route between the United States and the Soviet Union runs over the top of the world. Greenland, a Danish territory the size of Western Europe, almost entirely covered by ice, sat directly on the flight path of any bomber or missile traveling between the two superpowers. The United States had operated bases there since World War II, and in 1951 signed a defense agreement with Denmark that made the enormous Thule Air Base a cornerstone of American strategy in the Arctic. There was one complication. Denmark had a strict no nuclear weapons policy. Let's keep that detail in mind. It is about to matter a great deal in a second. In 1959, the United States Army Air Corps of Engineers began construction of something no military had ever attempted: a base inside the ice sheet itself. Using massive Swiss-made rotary plows, engineers carved a network of more than 24 trenches into the ice, the longest of them, known as Main Street, over 1,000 feet long, then roofed them with arched steel and let the snow bury everything. Inside those tunnels, they built a functioning town. prefabricated buildings housing up to 200 soldiers and scientists, laboratories, a kitchen and mess hall, a library, a chapel, a barbershop, a theater, and hot showers, an almost decadent luxury produced by melting the surrounding glacier. And at the heart of it all, the machine that made the whole thing possible was the PM2A, the world's first portable nuclear reactor, hauled across 150 miles of ice sheet in pieces and then assembled underground. The Army was remarkably public about all of this. Camp Century was featured in newsreels and magazines as the city under the ice, a triumph of American engineering and polar science. Two teenage Boy Scouts, one American and one Danish, famously spent months living there as part of the publicity. It was a wonderful story, but it was also a cover. The classified purpose of Camp Sentry was called Project Iceworm, and it was breathtaking. Sentry was the feasibility test for a plan to carve not 2 dozen tunnels into the Greenland ice, but a network covering some 52,000 square miles, an area roughly 3 times the size of Denmark itself. Through that frozen labyrinth, the Army proposed to deploy up to 600 modified ballistic missiles, nicknamed Icemen, mounted on rail systems, shuffling constantly between thousands of launch positions beneath the ice. The Soviets would know the missiles were somewhere under Greenland, but they could never know where exactly. An entire nuclear arsenal, invisible, mobile, and untargetable, hidden inside a glacier, pointed over the pole at the Soviet Union. There was, of course, the matter of Denmark, the sovereign owner of Greenland, with its firm nuclear free policy. The solution the United States chose was simple. Denmark was never told. Not about the missiles, not about Iceworm. The Danish government approved a research station and got a classified missile program on its own territory. The secret held for nearly 4 decades, until 1997, when Danish researchers digging through declassified American documents in the aftermath of a separate scandal over nuclear weapons at Thule found Project Iceworm in the files. The Ally had learned the truth 30 years after the fact. Interestingly, Project Iceworm was not defeated by the Soviets. It was not exposed by spies or canceled by Congress. It was actually defeated by ice. The entire plan rested on one assumption that the ice sheet was solid ground, stable, permanent, a frozen bedrock you could build in forever. The ice, however, had other plans. Almost immediately, the tunnels began to close. The ice sheet, it turned out, was not a solid at all, but a slow motion fluid, flowing, deforming, and alive. Tunnel walls bulged inward, ceilings sagged downward, in some places by feet per year. Crews with chainsaws and plows had to constantly recarve the shrinking rooms, fighting a glacier that healed itself around them, like a wound closing, you might say. The reactor chamber deformed so badly, the reactor had to be removed in 1963. The Army's own scientists ran the numbers and delivered the verdict. No tunnel network under Greenland could survive. The ice would crush anything built inside it. Project Iceworm was quietly abandoned. By 1967, Camp Sentry itself was evacuated and left to the glacier, which then buried it, exactly as predicted, under decades of accumulating snow. The Pentagon had picked a fight with an ice sheet, and the ice sheet won. The story should end there, but it doesn't, because Camp Century left behind two legacies, and they are locked together in one of the great ironies of the 20th century. The first legacy is scientific, and that one's quite magnificent. The cover story, remember, was research, and the research was real. In 1966, scientists at Camp Century drilled the world's first ice core all the way through the ice sheet to bedrock, nearly a mile of frozen time layer by annual layer. That core became one of the founding documents of modern climate science, the beginning of our ability to read Earth's ancient climate in the ice. And decades later, scientists re examined frozen soil from the very bottom of Camp Century core and found something astonishing: fossilized twigs and leaves, proof that Greenland's ice sheet had melted away almost entirely in the geologically recent past, and could do so once again. The second legacy is buried with the base. When the army abandoned Camp Century, it left nearly everything behind: buildings, rail lines, tens of thousands of gallons of diesel, chemical waste, sewage, and the radioactive coolant from the reactor, on one comforting assumption: that the ice would entomb it all forever. In 2016, a team of climate scientists published a study with a very uncomfortable conclusion. Under the warming trends that ice cores like Camp Century's own helped reveal, the ice above the base may begin melting away before the end of this century, exposing the waste the Cold War assumed the glacier would keep hidden forever. Follow that loop one more time because it is almost too perfect. A secret base, built on the belief that the ice was eternal, produced the very science that proved the ice is not eternal, which now predicts that the ice may hand back everything the base tried to hide. Camp Century is still down there, the tunnels crushed and flattened, the chapel and the barbershop and Main Street slowly compressing under 100 feet of snow. A Cold War Pompeii, you might say, imaged by NASA radar, waiting in the dark. The History Brief. Today, on some history news, we're traveling back not hundreds, but thousands of years. Well, specifically 100,000 years into the past, long before cities, long before agriculture, and long before writing. A young man suffered what may be one of the earliest known knife, or more accurately, stone blade attacks in human history. And remarkably, he lived. According to reporting from the Smithsonian Magazine, researchers studying the remains of an early Homo sapiens discovered in a cave in present day Israel found evidence that the man had been stabbed across the face with a sharp stone tool. Even more remarkable, the wound healed, meaning he survived the attack for a significant period of time afterward. The remains belong to an individual archaeologist called Quavza 25, one of at least 27 early modern humans buried in the cave between roughly 145,000 and 92,000 years ago. These individuals are among the earliest known members of our species to have lived outside Africa and are already famous for something extraordinary. They appear to have intentionally buried their dead, making the region in Israel one of the oldest known burial sites in the world. When scientists recently re examined Quavzev 25 using microscopic imaging and CT scans, they noticed something previous researchers had overlooked. A deep cut ran across the left side of his jaw. The injury sliced through bone and even damaged one of his teeth. But the bone also showed clear signs of healing. This wasn't damage that occurred after death. This man survived the attack. So, what happened? Researchers can't be certain. It's possible the wound resulted from an accident while making or using stone tools, but they believe interpersonal violence is the more likely explanation. Why? Because the injury is on the left side of the face, exactly where forensic scientists often find injuries in modern face to face assaults. Since most people are right handed, blows delivered during confrontations frequently land on the victim's left side. The pattern has remained surprisingly consistent across tens of thousands of years. And if that's correct, this could represent the earliest documented case of sharp force trauma ever identified in the archaeological record. But perhaps the most interesting part of the story isn't even the violence, it's the survival aspect. A wound like this would have been painful and dangerous in a world without any antibiotics, surgery, or even metal tools. Yet the injury seems to have healed. which suggests the man lived for weeks, or perhaps much longer after the attack. Many researchers believe he likely received help from others in this community. Someone may have brought him food, protected him while he recovered, or simply cared for him until he could fend for himself again. So, in other words, this isn't just a discovery of violence, but also evidence of compassion. Anyway, I thought it was kind of cool. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. Also, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we have different series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.